Okay, we're back. We seem to be having some internet issues, but I might be able to make that uh, less in a minute. Okay, let's see. Hopefully that helps. How's it going, Chris? Looks like the audio is coming through. Sorry I'm a bit late. Uh, it's been a crazy week. I just have a lot to do with work, and then um, I'm working on a project that I'll talk more about on a later date when it's more developed. But it's just a lot. But it's good. It's not bad. It's just a lot. Yesterday's stream was pretty good. We ended up discussing tools. That's definitely something that I am planning on doing a whole stream on eventually. And have been working on this project of mine a bit as well. And I mean, I think it's going okay, but I haven't had that much time to work on it. But my goal, so that you guys can hold me to it a bit, is to learn the Mandalorian soundtrack or the Mandalorian theme song by ideally the end of the year, but it probably will take me longer than that just because I have a lot going on. But hold on. I definitely need to tune it again. It's come out of tune a bit, but uh, I'm basically using I think it's called ukulele chords. It's not chords. It's something else. I'll look at it in a minute. But it's not reading music. I'm not there yet. It's basically like Guitar Hero, where it's basically just got four lines, and then a number for each note that you hit, and that number tells you which fret to use, and that which line it is on tells you which string to use. And it's very intuitive, except my mind, it's upside down in my mind, so I have to get used to it, the orientation of it. But it's much easier than having to learn music. That has been that's very helpful to getting me started on this. So I'm not at the point where I'm learning the language of music, but I need to get capable of enjoying the instrument and using it. But you can't. The issue is you can't use the method that I'm using for songs that you've never heard before because you need to know, um, like the timing and of the tune. I guess that sounds. Everybody who knows music is laughing at my inability to use technical language right now, but that's fine. Everything's good. Video and audio are great. Good, because it's telling me that there's a problem. But if you guys are telling me that it's good, it's good. I wanted to talk about pragmatism tonight a bit, and this was a topic that got discussed on our Discord call last week, and it was basically that I was saying that pragmatism should be probably how we should approach quote unquote scientific pursuits at this point, and that they should fall into two categories, which is moral and which is basically behavioral, societal, economic, moral. They're all pretty similar, actually. And then there's also technological side of it, which is engineering. So anything that has a goal of engineering in technology, or has a a goal of basically social engineering, which people are going to hear that and freak out. But I don't mean that to mean like mandated, like governmental laws or things like that. I mean that as in like what should you pursue in life? What should you how should you build a family? How should you build a community? And I mean this from the ground up, not from the top down. At least, you know, in the majority of the aspects of this. I'm not somebody who's like an I recognize that utopians are totalitarians, so I'm not a that kind of social engineer type of. That's not a goal of this. But I'm just saying, we, if you wanted to understand society, which you really need to do in order to figure out what is valuable and what is essential, not even valuable, you do need to do that. You need to know that society is built of families, and I need to eventually find a new word probably for castes because people don't like that word, but it's the best word to describe what the structure that I am outlining, and it's not a caste that you're restricted to. It's just the caste. There's 6 castes in every single society, and you can't change the castes, but you can change between the castes. So you can start as a laborer and become the king, or you can start as a king and become the laborer, or you could start as a soldier and become an elected official. So these are all various castes that you can't change the castes, but you can change between the castes. It's not based on like your family line or anything like that. You could be every single caste throughout at some point throughout your life, and go all the way up and then go all the way back down, and at will. Like there's nothing really restricting you intrinsically, and but people associate the word caste, especially in this part of the world, with like what we're taught in school about how India has some caste system, and we think of the untouchables in India, and that's just like that's what our mind does. But that's not actually a good way to think about it. When you examine every single society throughout history and our current one, you do realize they all have the same castes. They all have 6 castes. In ancient India, modern India, modern United States, France, ancient Israel, like it doesn't matter. If you look, it's always the same. And it follows that binary triality pattern. And you have 2 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 2, and there's 3 of them are market castes and 3 of them are governmental castes. So at the top you have king, that's government. Then below that you have or president, you could say. Below that you have a market caste, which would be like priest or scientist, essentially, whatever you want to call them. Basically are subject matter experts on the rules of the natural world, those people. And then they're the top of the hierarchy in a market structure. And then below that you have the middle castes, which are, again, there's one government and one market. The government one is elected official, or lords as we used to call them, and then or appointed positions like Secretary of State, essentially. So and then your middle market caste is a artist or craftsman, basically. So somebody with unique talents and that are related to basically uniqueness. So like that your craftsmanship is like this guy, the guy who made this knife. This knife was designed by a craftsman, middle caste. His name was Kiku Matsuda. He is a famous knife designer. He designed the knife. Then the knife was made by a laborer who just happens to be also just good at making knives, but doesn't design knives. And so Kiku Matsuda also makes knives of himself. But if he does that, the knives are thousands of dollars. And this one was not, because it wasn't made by him, but it was designed by him. So that brings the cost down. And but a laborer made it, a artist / craftsman designed it, and so that's 2 castes that went into making that knife, essentially. And then the bottom two castes are soldier or enforcer, which would be like cops and soldiers, and that's the bottom level government caste. And then the bottom level market caste is laborer, so somebody who, they're good at their job, but their job isn't um, centered around a talent that is personalized in some way. Whereas Kiku Matsuda has his own style, and it's, that's what makes his work have that personal aspect to it. That's why he's a craftsman. But if you just know how to make a knife and that is general, then that would be labor. So the value in you comes from your ability to execute, more so than your ability to design. And then so the value of the top market caste, which is scientist slash, subject matter expert slash, priest, I guess you could say, is wisdom and knowledge discovery, basically. I mean, the real value is discovery, and that leads to wisdom. But so, if on I guess the scientific side of things, and then on the tradition side of things, like theological traditions, it would be wisdom. That's your value, is eternal wisdom. And then that's a form of quote unquote, objective truth, and so is what is discovered about the natural world as far as the laws go in our scientific pursuits. That is also an objective truth, as far as we, interact with it. So their value is objective, their access to objective truth, ideally. And there's corruption in all levels of this, but I'm just talking about the goals of the castes, and the ideally. And then the middle one would be design and innovation from craftsmen and artists. And then the lower level caste of laborer would be execution and repeatability, would be basically and speed of your ability to execute a task and then do it again and do it again. That is the value of that. So obviously we know the value of enforcers like cops and soldiers. They basically, you have a king at the top of the governmental castes. They are the boss, and then they delegate to, and they pick they pick the appointed officials and elected officials in a way below, which would be lords and congressmen and, secretaries of state and education, defense, all kinds of things. Also judges would be this, judges and justices. And then their value is basically decision making of specific they basically make specific decisions, whereas the guy at the top, the king or the president, is more responsible for decisions regarding people who then he trusts to make decisions regarding issues below him. And then you have cops and soldiers that make sure that those decisions are followed through, unfortunately via force. So, I mean, I say unfortunately, but it does seem to be just how the world has to be, but hopefully not in a corrupt and totalitarian way, I guess. But you do have to have the enforcement of certain laws, and that will come down to soldiers and cops, or defense as well with soldiers. And so these are the various castes. You can start as as a mechanic and end up the king. So don't worry about that word caste as meaning a value judgment on people. It's not even a value judgment of a task. It's just an organized structure of tasks. But if you don't have enforcers and you don't have workers, if you don't have laborers and you don't have craftsmen, I mean, every single one of these pieces is essential. So this is the type of things that you can learn about regarding society structures. And it's probably best to say not a I guess not a societal a social engineer, but it's like a social transcriber would be more like the goal of this work. And then you as an individual should be the social engineer. You should look at the information and be like, okay, I want to be a congressman. I want to be in that caste for now, and then eventually go to that next one, or go, retire and just become a laborer for fun or something. I don't know. And you can also recognize that marriage is probably the most important civil responsibility that you have if you are attracted to the opposite sex. So that's the kind of things that are valuable from this work, that are pragmatic, is we do need to build society. Utopian visions are very dangerous, and you cannot solve all of society's problems. You can improve certain things, but you cannot to solve society's problems, and all of them. As soon as you think that you can always tell when this start to go a certain direction like that, where you're becoming utopian, and also that the next step is totalitarian, is you start blaming one specific thing as the problem that is the problem of all problems. And I will say there are problems that are more important than others. Like marriage is a structure that it's a central column of society, so that is very important. But if you think that it's like communism or capitalism or I don't know, Democrats, Republicans, women, men, this race, that race, whatever, if you start thinking those things are the problems, you are going down an incorrect path. Everything that exists exists for a purpose, and that means that nothing that exists is the problem. The problem can sometimes be a lack of existence of certain things, but it's not ever something that exists that is the problem. It's funny because we have, just as an example, like there's so like take immigration. And so this is the type of stuff I want to talk about, but I have been waiting because I know they're going to kick me off of YouTube. But from a pragmatic standpoint of demographic influences, basically, if you want to make sure that the people around you are people who share your culture and your habits and trends and things like that, that you identify with as being one of your group. People today are focused on things like walls, and I'm from the right, so I understand that. But the thing is that the focus, when you actually understand reality, is that the focus should be on reproduction. And you can't keep a nation and if you have a perfect wall but you stop having children, you will die out. It's impossible to sustain. You have to have children above a replacement rate. You can't even do it at replacement rate. You have to be above replacement rate because of the effect of of entropy and relativity, in order to overcome that, you have to be above replacement rate, not at replacement rate. If you're at replacement rate, you will actually be below replacement rate as it manifests over time. So this is a pragmatic thing, and it's also not even just a demographic thing, but it's also, that's just how it's discussed in politics today very often. But this is also, at least in the United States, in Europe, it's very much centered around economics. So they started bringing in a bunch of people from other countries to a bunch of who that were not European countries into the current European countries, and all these countries are going to fall apart. None of them follow the laws of reality except for maybe a couple, which we can talk about later. And if you don't follow the rules of nature with your nation, it will fall apart over time, even if it goes slower than others. And basically, this almost every single country on Earth is not a real nation anymore, and probably never really was. But it naturally was at the beginning of them, but then institutionally was not, and therefore did not continue. But economically, if you want to grow the economy, you don't grow it by just bringing in people from somewhere else. Like, you need to know, we need to encourage our people to have children, not just import a bunch of people from somewhere else artificially. So there's all kinds of things that you can learn about society from this work, and that are pragmatic, the most pragmatic lessons that you can learn. So when people ask me, like, what's the value of sentient singularity theory? It's like, well, probably warp speed, warp transportation, and also how to build a society. And that's the main thing, and there's very few other works in this space that are focused on that. I think Wolfram's work will probably become increasingly like that. Weinstein definitely applies his work to his understanding of society. Luis Razzo, who I interviewed, his work was heavily centered around this, and I don't agree with his solutions of how, but I understand where they came from. Basically, his theory is very similar to this, though, in some ways, but his solutions are totally, I just think they're arbitrary, but maybe not. Basically, his voting structure is based on the inverse square law and mirrors information processing and reality, and there is a trade-off between the more you donate to charity, the more voting power you have. So the more of your wealth you give up, the more voting power you have. I don't agree with this at all. I think it will lead to inevitable posturing. But you do need to address things like voting. How do we pick who votes? And because otherwise you're going to make arbitrary decisions that are wrong, and that leads to nations and economies and governments collapsing. So, like, when people will say things like, it's only white people, it's only white men, it's only white landowning men, it's only white landowning men with an IQ above 150. It's like, this is just continues to go, it's all nonsense. Like, this is not objectivity. The point of this work is to figure out where the lines are. Where are the objective castes? What defines them? What are the objective different types of tools? What defines them? Like yesterday we worked on, what are the where do the primary and secondary colors come from? Where does PEMDAS come from? Like, these lines and their relationships, and also understanding growth. These are the things that are the lessons from this, and the most pragmatic lessons that you can take from the theory of everything, which is a theory of everyone, and that makes perfect sense when you realize the most pragmatic application for this stuff is in our lives. And then basically you can realize that there's only one pattern. You can apply this to the chemical and atomic levels of engineering, and you can get metamaterials that can do crazy things. But until you understand a bit more about the structures on our level from a first person perspective, and then try and interpret those on lower and higher levels. It's hard to do that because you get the context from a first person perspective, and you're not an atom. You are an organism that can form nuclear families, which is the same structure as an atom, just 2 levels up. So then you can take the lessons you learn from that and apply it to understanding atoms. But you need the first person perspective, because if you get it from a third person perspective by examining from looking at things outside of you and then applying that to you, you're basically guessing first, versus if you apply it from what you know from experience and then look at outside, the direction isn't from a guess to testing. Basically, you're going from known experience from first person perspective, which is the most it is the only totally trustworthy. It's the only information source that you should take as totally trustworthy. I mean, I also think that scripture fills that role in some ways, but it's also, you can there's questions of application there that also come up. But if you have experienced something, you can trust that it is real, versus your friend's friend told you that they saw something. Like, that is third person beyond, and it's not nearly as trustworthy. And then if you get into even further than that and you just read a story on the news, that's even worse. And so you have to trust yourself. So you start from you. I think, therefore I am. And then you interpret the world. And one of the questions that I've talked about on here, one of the ideas that I've talked about on here was, what is the first question? It's funny because Isaac Asimov wrote a story called What is the Last Question? We're going to look at it tonight. And I basically was like, okay, what's the first question? And then the answer is, what is the first question? So the first question is, what is the first question? And the answer is, what is the first question? Because it's self-referential. And then the next information to come out is, what is the truest thing that I know, is the answer to what is the first question. And then the answer to that is I am. And then from there you build your world. And so that's 4 steps, 3 different I guess components. One of them is repeated twice, and then that is the starting block of everything. I mean, that is the Fibonacci sequence. It goes 1 1 2 3. It's, what is the first question? What is the first question? That's 1 1. And then what is the truest thing that I know? That's 2. And then I am. That is 3. So 1 1 2 3. And this is this is the beginning of information generation. You build from a singularity that uses itself to change its reference point and add information to itself and start building. So these types of applications of things can help you start thinking about a problem that's a pragmatic problem, and then and I'm working on taking it past 4 steps, but so far I'm at those first 4, and that's the universally applicable 4. Like, you always start with those 4, so they are the most important. The others might vary depending on the goal, but that's knowledge that is valuable in order to approach a problem pragmatically. How do you think about something? Like, what is, if you're going to decide who votes, okay, how do we know even that this is a good thing to think about? Because it might not. It might be a waste of time, because it might be that nobody should vote, and it might be that everybody should vote. And if that's the case, then we shouldn't be wasting our time with the question. But if we determine that not everybody should vote, but some people should vote, then you determine that it is worth the time to ask the question who should vote. And then you have to figure out, well, what is the goal of voting? That's pragmatic. Voting has a pragmatic aspect to it. And remember, you have to follow objective structures in anything related to consciousness. You can't use arbitrary lines. Like, even age is an arbitrary line. So to say anybody above 18, that's an arbitrary line. So, and you're not going to end up, there's no goal associated with that. So if you want adults voting, which is the goal of saying anybody above 18 should vote, that means you want, mature people voting is really what that comes from, but you've applied it subjectively. You need to think about what is maturity. Like, what is the definition objectively of an adult? And an adult that has, I guess, values rooted in peace and growth, which would be things that society objectively values, those two things. And those are the two values. Peace is the feminine's main objective, and then with society, and then growth is the main objective, main masculine objective from society. So they're simultaneous, but there is a directionality, like I've said before. So these types of questions are what Sentient Singularity Theory's main application, most important application is. And if this is the case, then it means science has come full circle with morals. And this is, I was trying to think of what is the next level of what is the label of the next level of discovery? So we had the nuclear era. That was like the last physics revolution. What is this physics revolution? What is this coming physics revolution? What's a good term for it? And basically, I think that the best term for it is we're about to enter the entanglement era, where we are able to manipulate entanglement structures in what I call the quantum substructure, which is basically like the heavens, or the what's Nassim Haramein call it, the tetrahedron, 64 tetrahedron grid, or the hypergraph, or the Rulio space, like all of these structures that are not subjectively perceived, but are the causes and contexts of what is being objectively perceived by you. And so the manipulation of entanglement structures. So this will allow you to manipulate matter, and the states of matter, because the states of matter are dictated by entanglement relationships. It will allow you to travel probably via warp, which basically you could entangle one area, structures that are linked with one area of space to in the quantum substructure, with structures that are linked to another area of space in relativity, that you entangle them in the quantum substructure, and then maybe you could just literally walk from here to Mars in one step. And like a Stargate type of thing, which is basically warp. This type of tech is the next revolution, and that is the technological pragmatic application of sentient singularity theory. But in order to truly understand what's happening with entanglement relationships, it's best to start from first person perspective, and that means you have to start by understanding the patterns on your level, which is the human organism social level, and then you apply it to levels below you and above you. But don't apply it to don't try and figure out levels above you and levels below you without figuring out you. This is why people who are staring at the stars and trying to detect, various proposed dark matter candidates and all kinds of things like that. These are not really making much progress, is because they're looking in the wrong place to understand things objectively at this point. And they should be looking at their own consciousness and not their inner space, not their outer space. And then we can apply the lessons from that to have warp speed. But artificial intelligence has to do with entanglement, because consciousness is a sentient singularity. A consciousness, which is a general intelligence, is an entangled information bundle. So it's all about entanglement as well. All of this stuff is about entanglement. Mind manipulation, memory manipulation, like this scary stuff, but also amazing. And all of this is going to, super conservative estimate, way less than 100 years, we're going to be capable of warp and mind control and all kinds of things that seem thousands of years away to somebody who doesn't understand how technology moves. Nobody thought you could blow up a city with one bomb in 1920. But then by 1940, everybody knew that you could do it. And I think I'm not sure exactly when the first atomic bombs were dropped, or even tested. But it was just like a decade or two between we are, messing with jet engines to we can blow up half a state with one bomb. This is a quote unquote, quantum leap, but it's a leap it's a up leveling of technology. It's not just an increase, it's an up leveling. And quantum computing, by the way, is a technology that is part of the entanglement revolution, because the problems and solutions regarding how to build quantum computers that are able to do things probably on their own, not even just with at our instruction. All those problems are related to entanglement. How is this qubit entangled with this qubit entangled with the universe? How do we isolate this qubit from that, atom in that star on the other side of the galaxy? Like, how do you do that is all about entanglement. It's about what is separate, what is one, what is inside, and what is outside. And these are the primary perspectives of entanglement. They are the backbone and the beginning of understanding the entanglement revolution. But most of scientific pursuits are focused around relativity, and they're also not even really focused in practical pursuits. Like, maybe they should have a thought about the pragmatic aspects of I don't know, things related to viral augmentation before we ended up in the situation that we're currently in. Probably gain of function, probably not the most pragmatic application of our time and energy. Actually, certainly not. I think that experience now tells everybody that that's true. Anybody who's like, well, we can learn more about them and then we can learn how to combat them. No, you can't. You can do it without doing that. This is the type of stuff that we should have had people who had access to that kind of power at the time understand. Is like, is this really a pragmatic application of our time and energy? Or is this likely to either be a waste or be destructive when when viruses escape. But, you know, c'est la vie, I guess. But it's these types of things are the main applications. There's two. Obviously, technology is always there, and the other one is social social engineering. But that's not. I don't mean that, like I said, in a totalitarian way. I just mean, what should you find valuable, and how should we start building the next the true how do you build a true nation? What is a true nation versus what is not? This is very important to know, and the more that you understand this stuff, the more you realize that totalitarianism is the way to fail, because choice is necessary to differentiation, and differentiation is necessary to meaning, and meaning is the point of all of this. So you can't remove choice and keep meaning. That's why you have choice. God could have turned you into an automaton that has no choice, but he didn't do that, because then he would just be playing finger puppets with himself, and what's the point? My biggest problem, okay, there's a lot. Wow. Thank you to everybody participating in the chat. This is, when I first started this project, I've told some of you this, I made some videos that were not live, and I'll do that again for complicated topics and also to update on projects and things like that. But I can't do that even once a week. I don't value likes. I like that you like the video if you find it valuable, because it is good for the algorithm so other people can find it, but I don't chase likes or subs, which is why I stream live, because interacting with you guys on the chat motivates me, because meaning comes from your impact on others, and this lets me see that there's like others being impacted. A like is not someone being impacted. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Yes, agreed. Put the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Yes, agreed. Broccoli, sprouts, and spinach. Cakes, yes. My biggest problem has always been sparrows. If only we could get rid of the darn things. I love sparrows. I have no problem with sparrows. I was feeding sparrows in the airport when we were coming home from my honeymoon. My wife was like wanting me to go wash my hands every time I would feed it. She kept handing me hand sanitizer. I'm like, I'm handing a bird a piece of bread. It's okay. But I like sparrows, is the point. Who is the Lord of the Rings? I don't know. God. God is the Lord of the Rings. He's also the Lord Ring. I want to watch. Okay. Hey Tyler, hey everyone. How's it going, Galaxy Frog? Does seem they're trying to avoid natural population cycles. It's a pretty good idea. Amen. The news, cool, good point. Yeah, it's like hyperlinking on the web, except quantum linking. That's a very good point, yes. So you're saying I should invest in Randonautica? Did you check out their theory page? No, I didn't. Let me write it down. Okay, I wrote it down. Maybe we'll look at it on the stream too. What if there was a sentient singularity app where it directed you to the most sentient singular point on a map? You are the most sentient singular point on a map that you know of, so it should just point to you always. I wonder what sort of thing, you don't need a map to do that, would even be found at such point. Yeah, no, you're thinking about space-time, and that's that's in relativity. It's not. There is no point in space time that is especially sentient, at least that I can understand. I know people talk about like vortexes and stuff, and that is kind of like an example of this, but that's because of its impact on sentient beings, basically all maneuvering, I guess, together. So if you have a bunch of people that are going to go figure out spiritual questions in a certain spot, it's going to turn it into a spiritual place. But it's not, there is no such thing as place. There's position relative to other sentient beings. What are the sentient beings inside of you? What are the sentient beings that you are inside of? What are the sentient beings around you? What is the choice map look like in your interaction with those beings, inside of you, outside of you, and around you? Those things are, that's like objective maneuvering in space, is about maneuvering via entanglement relationships. But it all starts to merge because lineage structures are objective time maneuvering, and those are also entanglement relationships. I bet it would be like a Taco Bell or a church. It's probably like a churches, and if this is anything, like, I know Sedona is like a place where everybody's always like, oh, you can feel the vortex in like Sedona. I don't know what that means exactly, but I know a vortex is what is the structure of information processing. So it's not a coincidence that they're using the term vortex, but it's just a place where people go for spiritual journeys. And I will say, probably one of my most important spiritual journeys I've ever been on was in Sedona, and it was me. I was rock climbing. It wasn't like a hallucinogenic trip. I was sober. You couldn't do this if you weren't. And I went on my first multi-pitch rock climb, which means like it's too high for one rope. You have to use the rope, climb up, and basically you climb up, and then your partner climbs up, and you belay them, and then you climb up, and you do this, and each one is a pitch. And so that each one, like, inchworming movement of your way up with your belay partner is a pitch. So it's 4 pitches, and it's a climb called Dr. Rubo's Wild Ride in Flagstaff. It's like 420 feet tall, 410 feet tall, something like that. And I'm afraid of heights, and even though I rock climb because I'm afraid of heights. And it was like a quest. Like, there was a point where I was at the very top, and I was getting over the edge of onto the very top of this. It's a spire, so and the top was covered in snow, even though there was no snow anywhere else. And I started slipping, and I like grabbed onto this tiny tree that looks like Mr. Miyagi planted it as a bonsai at the top of this place, like holding on. And my feet were, I mean, I'm roped in, but if you fell, it would be a very bad situation. Even if you didn't get hurt, you could get stranded. So falling is not okay. Even if you have a rope, it just might save your life, but it doesn't make it so that it's a not it still could put you in a very serious situation, even if you don't get hurt. And I probably wouldn't have gotten hurt because it was just empty space, but it would have been, first of all, extremely frightening. And also, then I would be hanging at the end of a 100-foot rope, and we'd have to figure out a way for me to get back onto the spire because I would have nothing to grab onto. It would be not fun. But my feet were just dangling over like 300 and something feet, and I felt like I was Frodo, like trying to climb to the top of Mount Doom or something. It's very cool. But things like that, if a lot of people are doing things like that in a certain location, you could have certain, I guess you could say, energies probably associated with a certain location. And this is actually what I think is happening with Skinwalker Ranch, is I think that something is going on with the bridging of basically they're doing quantum hyperlinking. A lot of quantum hyperlinking is happening at Skinwalker Ranch, and you have entities that we would associate with angels or demons, because they're probably, which is like a skinwalker. And then you also have UFOs associated with that location. And when a UFO, like a saucer, travels, if it's utilizing warp, it would be utilizing entanglement manipulation, and that means you're basically taking advantage of the quantum substructure, which is the save space of information, which is the heavens. So basically you're bridging the heavens and the earth when you do that. And if you're going to do that a lot in a certain location, you probably get a place like Skinwalker Ranch. You think there's any herps up there on those peaks and plateaus? Yeah, I found some when I was climbing. Those some spires. I found Arizona black rattlesnakes as we were climbing a few times. There are herps up there. They're not at the very top usually, but they're on the way up, and you have to be careful where you put your hands. It's always nerve-wracking to like grab onto a ledge in Sedona where you can't see, because I'm always thinking there's a rattlesnake, even though it's never happened to me. But I mean, I've seen them on the ledges, but I saw them before I put my hand there, and that's, thank God. I took photos of it. I'll pull it up actually. Yeah, that's a spiritual journey. You don't have to do hallucinogens to go on a spiritual journey. It's just anything that challenges your consciousness, and after the experience, you have a new perspective on something that's meaningful to you, I guess. Which means it was challenging to go through. I was so scared on that. I made my friend pause like multiple times. My goal was originally to climb El Cap, and I have the rock climbing skill to do it, but I don't have the nerve. And I realized that was one of the things I realized from climbing this is I don't think I will ever climb El Cap. And I used to think I would definitely climb El Cap, which is the tallest climb in the world. I don't think I could do it. My friend who took me on that climb is basically fearless when it comes to heights compared to me. And his first time going on that climb was horrible, and it took him like over 3 days, and he didn't climb another multi-pitch for months because he had like PTSD from it. There's no turning back. You're like stuck in the middle of a cliff in Yosemite. There's no like, oh man, let's just get off this. No, you have committed at that point, and you either have to go back down, which is not fun, and probably just as scary as continuing to go up. I'll never climb El Cap, and I've lost my desire to do so too. Here. This is a climb called Queen Victoria. I think this was my first multi-pitch. It was not nearly as scary as the next one that I did, that I talked about, but this is the climb. And basically you're climbing to the top of this, and this is a rattlesnake that was just chilling. I didn't even touch it. It was this exact position. It was in its baby rattlesnake, just sitting on the side of the climb. And that's where it was. Basically, you can see we had to climb past it. And so this is what you use to hold yourself, these cams, which is called trad climbing or traditional climbing, where there's no bolts. This one is one of the easiest of all the multi-pitch climbs in Sedona. Then This was the one that was like mind, like life changing. Um, Here, and I'll show you images that I got of a guy doing a rock climb that ended up life changing because he fell and he broke both his ankles at the same time, and I caught the entire thing on camera. I'll show you. Um, but this is the one that freaked me out. Like, look at that looking down. This spire right here, by the way, is 100 feet tall. So it's very, very tall. And it's like a sheer drop. But see there how there's snow on the kind of the tops of some of these areas, and it's wet, and you can see the water basically from the snow melt. But you can see all around here on the ground level, there's no snow. So we didn't even know that there was snow at the top. That's it. So you climb up this, and then you get on top of that. This boulder is probably like, it's over probably 30 feet wide. It's this whole climb is the total. It's over 400 feet, and that was not enough for me. I don't have any like major desires. By the way, if I don't know you, don't friend request me on Facebook. I want to prove it. Facebook, I'd use it to like talk to my aunt. There's nothing interesting that I post on Facebook. I don't even share my theory work on Facebook. Like, nobody on there knows what I'm working on. So my Instagram is the place to follow me, and you can message me and talk to me on there. And I share my life and my projects on there. I just don't talk to my family on there. Oh man, look, this is what I want to show you. That guy breaking his ankles, actually, real quick. And I'm not saying, when I'm talking about pragmatism, I don't mean everything that you do has to be pragmatic. I'm talking about our major pursuits that are not personal pursuits. I'm talking about the universal pursuits of humans. So, you know, should we be putting tax dollars to this? Should everyone be required to learn this in school? Should we send you to school at all? Who should be able to vote? Like, these questions are the types of questions that are most directly answered by sentient singularity theory. I keep reptiles and breed reptiles. Like, there is no practical application of that other than it does teach me about life. But you can't eat geckos like you can eat chickens or, you know, goats or something like that. So it's not practical livestock. But rock climbing is another one of those things there's no practical application really, other than indirectly I learn about life from keeping animals, even if I can't eat them. But that's an indirect value add. There's also an indirect value add from rock climbing. It helps you conquer your fears and focus, and it's a good exercise. But like, climbing up rocks in sometimes dangerous situations is not the most pragmatic use of your time, directly at least. So not everything has to be pragmatic, but the government's actions should be pragmatic. The universal actions of people, that, you know, things that you have to do, moral responsibilities, things like that apply to everyone or apply to most people, those types of things are pragmatic, should be approached pragmatically. And scientific pursuits, I guess you could call them, I hate the word scientific at this point, but I will use it because you understand what I mean. That is also something that should definitely be approached pragmatically. If it doesn't have a potential social application, and I don't mean like, oh well, one day maybe we'll figure out how this is useful. I mean, like, you already know what you're trying to figure out before you start working on it. You don't work and then say, well, one day we'll figure it out. If you do that, you get coronavirus. That's not good. If you do that, you end up losing control over the power that you unlock. Instead of having it work for you, you're working for it. Not good. I think that, yeah, here. This is the climb. So there's a climb in Joshua Tree. It's a bouldering climb, but it's very high. It's about 21 feet. Forgot what it's called. Like White Rabbit or something weird. And a guy was doing it, and he didn't commit at the very top. He made it to the top, but it was very scary to go just over the edge. And he tried to go backwards, and he let go, and thought that was the better option than going forward. And I have my camera on burst, and it's like, and I caught him like falling, and hitting the ground. And then the next photo is of his ankles, and they're both like this, and you can see the bone is coming through on one. So when I find it, viewer discretion is advised. But it was not fun. Not the most pragmatic application of, your time. And there are indirect value adds that come from things like that, but the essential things in life are pragmatic. Should be guided by pragmatism, I think, especially socially, like collective sense making things and collective energy applications and governmental structure and scientific pursuits, engineering. These are all should be guided by pragmatism. Why are you doing the genetic experiment that you're doing? Like, you should know that before you do the experiment. It's not just well, let's change this and see what happens, or let's mix these two things together and see what happens, or let's eventually try and figure out how gain of function research can help us defensively, but let's disregard that now and just see how crazy we can get things. That is not a good idea. That's when you are being used by powers that when you do that, you've already given up control. When you have a goal, you keep control much more so. I'm not saying total control, but more control than you have when you have no goal and you're just seeing what you can do. It's that line from Jurassic Park where Ian Malcolm is like, yeah, you took what others had done and you patented it and you're selling it, and all of your scientists were too preoccupied with whether or not they could, and never stopped to think if they should. The thing is that with the merging of with the entanglement revolution that's coming in science, it is the total merger of morals and engineering and physics and technology. And I mean, it's just the merging of everything. But morals is the framework in which it should be understood and checked. So, like, you can't disconnect the whether or not you should with whether or not you can. I was speaking to a mathematician that I know about whether or not warp transportation was a good idea to do, because basically you're inside of a sentient being. So like you're jumping from here to here, and you're linking information potentially outside of context. And if you're doing that, like, maybe you shouldn't do that, and maybe you shouldn't do that without permission, or maybe you shouldn't worry about it. But like, the first question is not whether or not you can do it. It's whether or not you should do it without worry, whether or not you should only do it in specific contexts, or whether or not you just should not ever do it. Like, you need to answer that question first. If should you ever do it? If you should do it sometimes, what are those times? Or should you never do it or should you not do it? And if you shouldn't do it, are there specific instances where you shouldn't do it and specific instances where it might be allowed? I don't know. But don't destroy, if you're a cell, you don't want to destroy the organism that you're in, because your world will come crashing down. We have to remember this. You cannot go changing entanglement structures without realizing that you're inside of a sentient being. You have to keep it in mind morally the entire time, because the moral aspects are inseparable from the physical and the experiential realities of whatever the effects of that action will be. If you go and you do something that destroys information cohesion of the universe, you have violated a moral some type of moral structure. You have done something immoral because you didn't treat the universe as a sentient being when you did this, or you didn't realize you didn't remember that was the context. It's not this unconscious universe that you could do whatever you want to. And when you start messing with entanglement, you're actually messing with change that's objective, not subjective. If you bulldoze the moon, that's not the same as you doing warp transportation. One is much more objective. And if you nuked the moon tomorrow, that would not be nearly as... It just wouldn't... It doesn't have the same universal implications of impact as doing warp transportation. There's this part in the Bible where God tells Moses to go down to the Israelites, and he's like, the Israelites are panicking and they want water. God tells Moses, go speak to the rock and ask it for water, and then water will come out. And so Moses is so pissed now at the Israelites, it seems, at least by my interpretation, that he's frustrated, and he's basically before them all, and he's like, listen up, you rebellious hooligans. Should I hit this rock and make water come out of it for you? And he hits the rock and water comes out. But what is the interpretation of this is there's lots of ideas, but one of the ways in which I interpret this is he didn't treat the rock as a living thing. And the rock represents base, like it's God. So the rock is bedrock. It is your cornerstone. It is God. So he didn't treat the environment around him as a sentient being. And if he did, he would have asked, like God instructed him, go ask the rock for water. He didn't say go hit the rock or drill the rock. He said go ask. And then Moses did not do this. He went and he hit the rock to make water come out. And this, it means like you used your own force and you didn't take into account who you are in, and you didn't ask for their permission. You just did it. I think about this a lot in terms of warp transportation. I think that it's very relevant. I think that there might be instances where warp transportation doesn't have moral issues, and then there would be instances where it does. But they are contextualized by realizing that you are inside of a living thing with feelings and goals and a mind and consciousness. If you don't do that, you can't understand entanglement. And we are eventually going to have people that don't understand entanglement, but that have inherited the structures of entanglement manipulation, and that is bad. It's like it's unearned power. That's what it is. And we're rife with that already, and this is going to take it up a notch, because now the moral implications are much more directly tied to your impact on the universe itself. You impact the universe when you change entanglement structures. directly, not indirectly. And if you change things in space-time, you indirectly change entanglement structures versus directly changing entanglement structures. I mean, this has the next generation of scientific understanding, the entanglement revolution will merge spirituality, and there will be no distinction between spirituality and engineering and things like that. You need warp transportation will probably have to do with perception. So you will need to picture in your mind where you want to go before you go. Like Jumper, that movie Jumper, where he has to have seen where he wants to go before he can jump there. That is going to be like warp in some way. Not exactly like that, but you're going to need to have a goal. You can't warp somewhere with no goal. There is nowhere to warp to without a goal. It's different than just driving straight on a road and seeing where it takes you. You can't do that. There is no straight. There is no right. There is no left. It's just closer to where you want to go, or back towards where you were previously. And that means you have to perceive and be aware of where you were previously, where you are now, and where you want to go. So you can't just warp into anywhere. In Isaac Asimov's Foundation series that's now a show, there's a ship in that uses warp, basically, or jump technology, they call it. And it's just jumping around the universe because it was originally linked to somebody's mind, and that's how they were directing it where to go, but then that person died or something like that. And now it's just jumping randomly at specific intervals to different places around the universe. You can't do that, I don't think. Even Paulina said this when we were watching the show. She was like, if nobody's connected, it can't go anywhere. It's not that it would jump somewhere random. It's that it just wouldn't jump. And I was like, that's a very, like, wise insight. But that's, there is no somewhere without a goal. And I don't know why my Facebook is going so slow, but it's difficult to find these pictures of that guy's broken ankle. It was his birthday too, by the way. And we had him like wrapped up on the crash pad that you put underneath people who are climbing, boulder climbing with no rope. And I just remember being like, he was like, it's my birthday. And I was like, it's your birthday? Well, happy birthday. Your ankles are broken. It sucks. But he was okay. Eventually. Oh, here it is. I got it. Look at this. So this guy was climbing this. I forgot what this climb is called, but basically, see how it's really sketchy at the top because it's at an angle. It's not directly flat, so you have to like stay really close to it, or else you could fall backwards, which is really bad. That would be a huge fall. It's 21 feet, I think, to the top, and this guy bailed and he got scared and he was okay. There's a friend of mine climbing up it. She got like halfway. This guy, though, this is the guy. So he's at the top. He's grabbing onto this this crack, and he has to go over the top, and you can see he gets scared, and he decides to jump down, which is 20 feet, and he hits the ground, and then his ankles broke, and that blood there is from his bone coming through his ankle. We had to like take him, like carry him out on a stretcher, wait for emergency services. Not fun. But that will be a birthday that he never forgets. This climb is called the womb, because you're like emerging from a womb. Joshua Tree is another one of those like spiritual places. a lot of deserts, and that's consistent with scripture too. The script, I've never heard scripture, and maybe this is because I'm not Mayan or something like that. That's like, you know, you had to spend 40 years in the jungle. It's like you had to spend 40 years in the desert. And that's because water is usually associated with um like knowledge, like information. So being in the desert means you're in an information drought, at least metaphorically. Super literally, not metaphorically. What do you think of UFOs, Bigfoot, giant wolves, and whatnot are being the same type of entity that is able to choose its form? I have no idea, but I think that there's demons. I think UFOs are different than things like Wendigos. I think that Wendigos are demons, and demons and angels are actual entities that don't have free will anymore, or at least don't have free will, whether they realize it or not. And they are basically matter that is on a frequency that we don't normally perceive. Just like there's a light that you can't see. You can't see ultraviolet, but birds can. You can't see infrared, but you can feel it, but you can't see it. My boas over there can see infrared, not just feel it. They can feel it and they can see it. We can only feel it, usually. There are actually people, from what I understand, that can see infrared, but it's very few. So sometimes you can see frequencies that aren't available in your normal perceptions. There's also sound that is normally beyond our ability to hear, but your dog can hear it because it's too high or it's too low. And there's also frequencies on your radio that you cannot usually hear, but if you tune it right, then you can hear it. And sometimes things happen where frequencies get crossed and you can hear two songs at the same time. I think that this is true of matter, because if it's true of energy, then it's true of matter, because matter and energy and information are all just three perspectives of one thing, which is observation of the context of context created by sentient singularities. That's what it is. So by the entanglement relationship of sentient singularities. So there's probably beings, living things that are, their matter is on a frequency that is not normally perceivable by us. And then maybe sometimes when you're falling asleep or first waking up, or if you have like what we would call schizophrenia or something like that, or it's just a weird moment, you might be able to see these things. But that's what I think it is. UFOs are totally different. UFOs are they are technological craft developed by like probably the humanoids of the previous aeons that utilize entanglement structure to maneuver. So they're utilizing the heavens to maneuver. So they'd be closely associated with things that would be more purely spiritual, whatever that even means. There's no purely material and purely spiritual. Matter is what matters to your spirit, to your consciousness. And it is what you perceive, which means it is what you have to take into account, means it is what matters. So, in the moment. But they're not the same. Like, I don't think that UFOs are not technological craft. Like, just they are the next gen of transportation. That's what they are. They, like our current craft, they utilize, all of our current physics in order to maneuver. We don't really use nuclear power to move that much these days, unless you're on a nuclear sub or a ship. But at the same time, I've actually heard there are nuclear planes like the TR-3B, like anti-gravity or electrogravitic, whatever you want to call it, plane that's supposedly classified by our government and designed by Skunkworks. Probably exists, I would think, and I've heard it's nuclear powered. And you can do it on that because the weight of the shielding doesn't matter because you were using mass negation on it. You can't do that. Like they tried to make nuclear powered bombers in the 1950s, and it was not really feasible, and it irradiated the crew. And both Russia and the United States made nuclear powered bombers and tested them. And like Russia's solution, by the way, so like this is the difference between America and Russia at that time. The Americans didn't, I don't even know how much they flew their bomber, or even if they flew the bomber. Russia flew the bomber, and their solution to making the shielding as light as possible so that the crew didn't, cook, was one of their solutions was they just used old people to fly it so that it wasn't as big a deal when they were irradiated. I mean, it's practical thinking, but that's like very, very Soviet Union. That's like a very defining move of the Soviet Union. But the next gen of transportation utilizes manipulation of entanglement, and that would be UFOs. They also use anti-gravity, quote unquote. That one is probably also to do with entanglement, but I honestly, how you would do warp transportation is more intuitive to me than how you would do anti-gravity. But I still kind of see how you would do it. But basically what you would do is you're trying to create an instance where you are isolating yourself from around you. So it's almost like if you go outside of Earth, then you can float because there's no quote unquote gravity, or it's not as strong. You are basically like isolating yourself in a bubble that removes yourself from what is around you, and therefore allows for the basically, it's not anti-gravity as in it's making gravity an opposite force of gravity. I think it's basically whatever is happening with the Earth where you have gravity. And I know people will say it's because of mass, and sure, but there's more to it. You have very obvious gravity holding things together, and it's really in the animating force that is conscious action by existence itself that is being applied inside of Earth. When you leave and you go outside of Earth, that force stops being applied for the most part. So that you're basically taking advantage of that kind of thing where you're isolating yourself from that action that is being taken by God, the universe, whatever you want to call that, and you're disentangling yourself from God, basically, or from his actions. I don't know exactly how that's done. I've seen proposals, and I know the Navy issued patents, supposedly. That could be disinformation. I don't know. But, I mean, they filed those patents, like, within the last couple of years. But that, like I said, that could be disinformation. But I have no idea, like, exactly what would be the... It explains what is at least proposed. The Nazis were doing all kinds of technological experiments related to this, and they were like spinning mercury around and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know what that does. It influences electricity, which is about entanglement and the application of force by the universe. So it has something to do with that, but I need to give it more thought. but even that is probably a technological ability related to entanglement. It's everything coming, including from quantum computing to artificial general intelligence to warp to even all of our social engineering, basically, of how do you create objectively create a nation. That is an entanglement technology. It is what is it in how are people entangled objectively. So what is your caste? What is not even caste? It's like, what is your community? What is your or tribe? What is your nation that tribe is within? What is the entanglement lineage structure that links that over generationality between the generations? So basically, where do you get your citizenship? Is it from your mom? Is it from your dad? Is it from both? Is it from neither? Can you change it? Like, these questions are related to entanglement, and they are answered by the same the application of the 4 primary perspectives, and that's also going to be true of warp and everything else. When I did 5-MeO-A DMT, I saw Moses hit the rock with the staff. I hit the DMT crystal with my pipe, the staff, and the water came out inside my mind. Tabernacle plus Ark of the Covenant is acacia wood DMT. There's lots of arcs. It's not just acacia wood if it is acacia wood, but that makes sense that would be an arc. An arc is a connection between two things. An energetic connection, which is an informational connection. When you have like a node here and a node here, and you have an arc of electricity, it's a connection. Quantum computers are also going to be an arc between information, and in a way that we do not understand. There's lots of arcs, but DMT is an arc. Pretty sure Jumper stole the concept from Dragon Ball Z. I'm pretty sure Dragon Ball Z stole it from something else too, and then something stole it from that, and it's an eternal concept, I'd say. It may be more metaphorical, but probably more to do with the sky. I remember hearing submarines and whales on the beach when I was a kid. You could hear submarines and whales when you were on the beach. That is awesome. I was listening to recordings of blue whales the other day, and they were talking about how loud they are, but you just can't hear it. And I was thinking about it. But that is cool if you could do that. What about the plain white sphere people seem to see out in the woods or up in the skies quite often? I don't know, they're probably like technological things. They're like drones or craft, I would say. I mean, my video that I posted is basically a white ball of light, those UFOs. If you look back on my videos probably a few weeks ago, probably a couple months ago at this point, I saw 2 UFOs flying over Los Angeles, and I recorded one of them. The other one disappeared before I got my phone. And I wasn't the only one. If you search the date that is listed in the description of that video, and you search, like, I think it was August 27th, UFOs Los Angeles, we'll do it actually right now. You will see that I was not the only one who saw them that day. Multiple people saw them. Some of them are very obviously exactly what I saw, where I saw it. And some are also like very obvious craft over the ocean earlier that day. And I don't know if it is the same thing, but I mean, it looks like it. UFOs. Los Angeles, August. I don't know how to spell August. I think that was the date. Let's see. But I caught him on video. That's the only time I've ever seen that before too. And I've seen everything in the sky before, and this was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I grew up next to an Air Force base, and I live next to the airport. Like, I know what's a helicopter and a blimp, and I thought one was a blimp at first, and it was not. And you can see it move. I didn't even realize it until after watching it. It's right here. And the video does not do it justice. It's so bright. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. And it starts over here. Right there. You can see it right there. And not that light, but that's it. Perfectly circular ball of light, brighter than anything I'd ever seen in my life in the sky. And it's on the side, the left side. My wife is driving, and we're driving on what's called the 210 heading west. And we're just about to hit Glendale, if you know LA. And then it disappears. The first one I saw was hovering right above downtown LA, and it disappeared. And that's how I knew it wasn't a blimp. But then this one disappears here, and I'm looking for it again. And I thought I just lost it, but then I moved the camera to go forward, to look forwards, and it's way past Glendale at this point. It basically jumped from where it was before to over here, and it was so instantaneous that I didn't realize that it jumped. I thought I just lost it. And then when I was looking at the video later, I was like, that's not just a shift in perspective that made me make it look like it was over here, and then now it's over here. It literally was over here, and now it's over here. And it continues to move because it went over Glendale, and then it's now over here. That's it right there. And you can see plane. That's a plane flying underneath it. That's not a plane. So I know it's not a plane because that was a plane and that was not. And it's above the mountains that is like Griffith Park area, and it's moving past Griffith Park now, so it continues to go away. Like, it was over, you can see it's over Glendale over here, and then as we're driving, it continues to move towards Griffith Park, and then it moves over Griffith Park, and then it goes past Griffith Park, and it continues. And then I went home, and I don't know where it went after that. But yeah, UFOs. Okay. Yeah, this is freaking out. What is going on? My computer's freaking out. So let's do this again. I need a new computer. If you'd like to contribute to Sentient Singularity Theory, this project, monetarily, so I can get a new computer, link to Patreon is below. I very much value every single one of the probably 2-3 patrons that I have, and you know that because most of you I talk to every week in Discord. Okay, come on. Let's go. There are other videos on that are downtown LA that day. Where was it? See what we got. I have it linked somewhere, so I can find it, but I don't understand why it's so hard to find these things. Yeah, they definitely suppress things regarding this topic all the time. I could tell this when I was looking for stuff on Bob Lazar. Like, they would suppress that documentary that he made all the time. I'm gonna just find this on where I know I have it linked. So let's see. I remember. Do you think New Schwabenland is a thing? I don't know what that is. Would you ever consider calling the airport people and asking them if they saw it? I do not need to call the airport people and ask if they saw it. I have no real interest in doing that because I saw it. So I don't need, and my wife saw it, and I caught it on video, and other people filmed it the same day, which I will show you the videos. I do have them linked in uh, in my Discord. And let's see here. But yeah, I don't need to call them. Like, they'll either lie to me and say they didn't, or they won't know and say they don't know, and it's too much work to look, or they'll say that they saw it, in which case I'm like, okay, thanks for acknowledging what I already know. It doesn't make sense to me for me to do that. If it was somebody else and they were doing a report on it that was like you needed the data from different perspectives and things like this, that I understand, but um, I'm not doing that. September. Okay, here we go. I think I here. But the videos are very obvious. The one that there's two videos. One of them is filmed over the water. It's not so obvious that this is the same thing that I saw, but this one is during the day, so you can see the craft. It's not a in this video. It's not a ball of light. The next one is a little bit later in the day, and it's the ball of light that was hovering above downtown LA that I saw that disappeared right before I got my camera out. They caught it on camera. These people, and you could tell the sun's going down, and then right when I saw these, the sun had just gone down. It was like 8 p.m. Let's see here. I think I sent them to my physicist friend. Yep, here. Ads are so annoying, and that's my job, and I still find it annoying. Okay, here. This was a video filmed on the 27th of August, 2021. Same day I saw mine. And same exact location as the first one. Oh, this is it's both videos in one. Somebody had collected them. So look at this over the water. Like, that is a metallic ball hovering, moving over the ocean. Credit Mark Fix Drake, August 27th, 2021. And it's obviously during the day, and this is not where I saw mine, but it could have been the same craft, who knows. But that is very much like obviously a floating spherical metallic object. And if you know anything about this subject, it's very tied to water. This is later that day. credit of Chris Conti on August 27th, 2021 as well. This one is right above downtown LA. This is the one that I saw right before it disappeared. And you can tell because he zooms out at a certain point. You can, by the way, look, there's a plane flying by it. So like, it's not a plane. Like this idea that it's a plane, it's not a plane. It's very obvious. It's not like anything that you imagine when you see it in person. And I know it wasn't Venus or Jupiter or Saturn because I track the planets all the time. Like I know exactly where they are. Always. Because I have the Skyview app and I've had it for years and I got obsessed with it. It's very cool in Hawaii. You could see Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter at the same time, and the moon. But where's the part where he zooms out? I thought that there was a part where he zoomed out and you could see the buildings. Maybe it's, I'm kind of skipping around. But there is a part where he moves. Okay, it's over here. I think you can start to see some of the structure. Let's see what they're saying. I know they're speaking. Yeah, see right there. He shows you downtown, and it's right above downtown. So here he's speaking. You can maybe hear him.
So this is terrible picture. Good girl.
They're like talking their talk.
So that plane just flew right by. It's a terrible picture, but we've been following this thing for like 5 minutes probably. And it started way to the north of us. The thing is, if it was a balloon, it seems like it would go in one direction.
It's not a balloon.
But it started north, came south, then headed east a ways, and now it's heading west. Downtown is right over there.
Oh, that is not a helicopter.
At first we thought maybe it was a helicopter and we were catching reflection off the windshield. Then we thought it was a balloon, but if it's a balloon, it feels like it would move in one direction. I don't know. We always watch these shows on TV and wonder what it would be like if we ever saw something. This is the first time when we honestly have a question about what the heck it could be. We're looking at it with binoculars and it sort of undulates around like it could be a balloon, except that
it undulates around because it's moving in entanglement via entanglement technology, and that changes the perspective that it's perceived as. It doesn't actually change shape. When they're like shape-shifting UFO, it doesn't change shape. It's that shape is an emergent perspective in space-time because space-time is emergent. It's not, doesn't really exist. So depending on what it's doing in entanglement with the tech that it's manipulating entanglement of its structure, and depending on the perspective that you're looking at it from, it will appear to essentially change shape. But I can't even tell you that it is changing shape or that it isn't changing shape. It's just that shape is dependent upon your perspective on an entanglement structure. So it's messing with entanglement. It's messing with how you perceive shape. That's all that matters. It's not that it's changing shape or it's not changing shape. It's that it's messing with how shape is being perceived, because shape is only perceived. I blame Elon Musk. Compilation video of these would be amazing. There's a lot of them. I mean, there's videos of these things above New York City. There's pictures of them above Washington, D.C., above the Capitol in 1952. I mean, thousands of people saw that. Hundreds of people got photos, I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of photos that you can find online of that same event. But the fact that these two people filmed this on the same day, which is this day that I saw it, and this one looks exactly like when I saw it. It's in the same exact location, just earlier in the day. I mean, I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. I wouldn't make it up either. Like, I wouldn't make it up and then offer as my evidence a super grainy video that doesn't do it justice. But and it took me a few days, and my family was like, "Did you see if anybody else saw anything that day?" And I was like, "Not yet." I just kept putting it off. But then eventually I Googled it and found this video on YouTube. I mean, it's definitely a UFO. And by UFO, I mean a craft from the humanoids of the previous aeon or whatever they are. It's a technological craft. It's not like a spirit orb or something like that. It's whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but people ask if things are that. That I don't know what that is, but this is a technological creation. Did you ever find any videos of the one you saw? Yeah, that's the one I just played. Um, there's a video of the one I saw. That the video that I just played it's of the first one that I saw, not the one that I filmed. The one that I'm not sure, but the one that I saw first was perfectly above those tall buildings in the very center of downtown LA. I saw it when I was driving on the 210 westward. And you can look to the left and look south at downtown LA. It's a very beautiful view. Everybody in LA knows what I'm talking about, and it's like a perfect view of downtown LA from on the side of a hill, probably, I don't know, 10 miles north or something. And there was just this super bright light hovering above it, and I was like, that's weird. That looks like the UFO videos that I've seen. And then I was like, it's not a helicopter, obviously. It's not a plane. It might be a blimp because there are blimps that do go around there, but they usually are only out during the day. And then I looked and I saw it because I saw another one, which is the one that I filmed, and I looked at it, and then I looked back at the other one and it was gone. And I was like, okay, that's not a blimp because blimps don't disappear like that. That's how I know it wasn't a blimp. And then I watched this second one, and which is the one I caught on film. So it was, I mean, I think it was a separate one, unless it looked for a minute like it was in two places at once, but I think I saw both of them at the same time, which makes me think it was just a second one. It wasn't that it warped from downtown LA over to above Glendale, and that it's all one craft. I think it's two, because I could see both at the same time. I know I could have seen both at the same time because when I first looked, I saw both, which was what was so weird at first. It was like the two brightest lights I'd ever seen in the sky, and there was two of them, and one was above Glendale. Basically, it wasn't really above Glendale. It was like south of Glendale and east when I first saw it, and then it moved to above Glendale. The first one was above downtown LA directly. This one in this video that this guy Chris Conti filmed, this definitely is earlier in the day than when I saw it, but it does look like it's the afternoon, and I saw it right after sun went down. And so it could have been an hour later after this. And I know that the light was still out an hour earlier because we were shooting our like makeup photos for our wedding because the photographer accidentally deleted the others. But I mean, it's right above downtown LA, so
It started north, south, and headed east a ways, and now it's heading west. Downtown is right over there. First, we thought maybe it was a helicopter.
it's higher up than when I saw the one above downtown LA. And the one I saw, it's cool because in my video it shows a plane fly underneath it, the one that I filmed, and in his video too, he also shows a plane flying underneath it, just during the day. Like, there's a plane. It literally flies by. Look at that. That's not a plane. Like, people in LA don't just randomly point their cameras at the sky and be like, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Like, we see helicopters every day at all times of the day, all day. They call them ghetto birds. Like, there's a term for them here that I had never heard before I moved here. And, like, they're like, oh, there's another ghetto bird. And they're everywhere all the time at all hours. And they use spotlights all the time, and you know what that looks like. And there's planes landing and flying all over. There's like 5 airports within 20-mile area, probably. It's like Van Nuys Airport, Burbank Airport, LAX, Santa Monica, and it's probably another one that's small. Like, there's so many airports, there's planes everywhere. This was not like that. I've never looked at a flying object and been like, what is that? And I've seen the stealth bomber before, but it was during the day, so it's pretty obvious what it was. But it looked, your mind is like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Like, it's not, this was not like anything I've seen. People will disregard it because it's a video and it's hard to like, try taking a video of the moon when it looks epic at night. Like, when you see the moon and it looks awesome, try taking a video of it on your phone and then show it to your friend and be like, look at how epic the moon looks, and your friend will be like, looks like the moon. Because you don't see it's not as intense when you film things that are in the sky far away on your phone. You just don't capture the brightness, you don't capture how close it looks. It always looks further away, it always looks dimmer, and it always looks more benign. This was like that too. So if that happens with the moon, it definitely happens with like a UFO light. That they don't flash, and there's videos of like New York City UFO. This is one of the best videos of this. This was from 10 years ago. This is CBS. And as you can see, I've showed it here before. Everybody's looking at them. They look exactly like what we just looked at. And there they are. And they're just like flying around. They're like yellowish white balls of light that don't blink. And it's funny because people will be like, it's balloons. Listen, there are balloons in the sky all the time above cities. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's weird because when you watch them move, not just this video, but others, they move like birds or fish with each other. Then I don't mean like changing direction simultaneously like a flock. I mean, like, if you were floating in the air with your friends and you had control over it, this is how you would move. It's different than... It's like how you would fly around with your friends if you weren't constrained by aerodynamic constraints. It's very strange, but it also makes perfect sense. But it's funny because you can look at this, and at the end of this video, the person taking the video, this was 10 years ago, 2010, and this is CBS's YouTube channel. At the end of this video, right now, the filmer, the person taking the video, points at, what is around them. And it's an entire block of New York City staring at the sky and pointing. Do you think that everyone here is an idiot staring at a balloon and has never seen a balloon in the sky in their lives? If you are listening to the stream, you have probably seen a balloon floating in the sky at some point that came undone at someone's birthday party, and even the Mylar ones, and you never were like, is that a flying saucer? I guarantee it. You don't get an entire block of New York City people who never look at the sky anyways. Like, New York City people do not look at the sky. They don't even look at each other. And they're all staring at the sky, talking to each other about what they're seeing. People are crazy when they're like, oh, people back then, they were crazy. They thought it was just a weather balloon. They were morons. No, you're being a moron. Oh, it's just balloons in the sky that literally cause an entire block of New York City people to talk to each other and point at the air, at the sky above them. No, you're a moron. And or you're being a moron. You're not a moron, you're being a moron. And LA people do not worry about flying objects in the sky that are helicopters, blimps, or planes. We see them all day long, every day, and we don't question it. And when 3 people film videos on the same day of weird craft flying around above LA, it's because there's weird craft flying above downtown LA on that day. Like, that is, people who are like skeptic types, who like skepticism a lot, be like, Occam's razor, the simplest solution is the one. I think that's Occam's razor. And it's like the simplest solution to explain that an entire block of New York City people think they see craft flying around above New York City is that there's craft flying around above New York City. If a bunch of people in LA see and film independently mysterious craft flying around above, Los Angeles, the simplest explanation is that there is mysterious craft flying around above Los Angeles, not your explanation of like, well, if you take a balloon and it's a mylar balloon, and that mylar balloon is caught in a vortex that keeps it from moving in one direction and starts, keeping it in one place, makes it look like it's hovering, and that balloon is so reflective that even at night, the moonlight reflects off of it to make it even brighter than the planes that are flying by. It's like, there's no way to make this simpler than there's mysterious craft that are luminescent when viewed at, when it's not up close, at least, and not full brightness, that are flying around above Los Angeles. Very weird. I've never seen anything before that like that, or like that before or since that day. And it was weird because I know people say this stuff with UFO experiences, and it is related to consciousness because it's related to entanglement. It was like it wanted to be seen. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like moving with us. It was in the perfect spot to show exactly what was going on. And I don't know. I've never seen weird craft in the sky before, so I don't really have a habit of that kind of thing. Unless you use a P90 camera. My friend uses a P90 to take pictures of wildlife. That is an amazing camera. Yes, if you use a P90 camera, which is Nikon's super zoom, that camera will make the moon look epic. You can see a lot with that. If you zoom into Saturn with Nikon's super zoom P90 camera, you can see the rings. That is awesome. When we were in Hawaii, I told that to Paulina. I was like, I wish we had rented a camera, a Sony, and I was like, I wish we rented the Nikon because we could literally take photos of Saturn and see the rings with it. That's an awesome camera. Seems likely to me it's a weather blimp. It's not a weather blimp, Chris. I know it's there's nothing. I'm telling you, I see blimps all the time. All the time. This thing, one of them disappeared before my very eyes. Blimps can't do that. I see blimps all the time. It's not like I've never seen a blimp. I've seen countless blimps. They are constantly above downtown LA. This wasn't that. That was my first initial idea, but then I saw there was 2 of them, and only one of them was above downtown LA, and that's where the blimps usually are. And then it disappeared before my eyes, and the other one was moving way too fast to be a blimp. And also, they don't use blimps at night very often, at least that I see here, because they use the blimps usually here. I don't know what else they use them for, but it seems that there's always some type of advertising agenda attached to it. But there's blimps above downtown LA every week, and I see them every week. It's never given me pause. In the Keys, they would tell you it's a military blimp with anyone who is a skeptic about it, but they probably call morons or just ignorant. It's a mysterious craft hovering above downtown LA. That's what it is. I'm not saying anything else that is obvious, but that's obvious. It was not a blimp. I'm positive it wasn't a blimp. Not saying it was aliens. Positive. I'm not positive of that. Or extraterrestrials. I don't really like the word aliens, but um, I think it was that. But like, I can't not positive. But I'm like not over. I would say I'm over 90% confident, and that's like pretty high, and I recognize that. But I am 100% positive it was not a blimp. 100%. I've seen every military craft that is declassified. I Davis Monthan Air Force Base, where I grew up, has the biggest fleet of planes in the world. You can see it on Google. The Google like Tucson, Arizona Boneyard. It's the biggest stockpile of planes in the world. I saw military jets flying every day of every type, and I could tell you every modern fighter jet that exists. And like this was nothing. This was not a military craft that is at least declassified. It might be a classified military craft. I'm not saying it's not that. But if you're a classified military craft, why are you hovering above downtown Los Angeles? That's not usually standard procedure. It's usually avoid hovering above downtown Los Angeles. If there's anything that you could do if you're a classified military craft, don't hover above downtown Los Angeles, the Capitol building in 1952, and New York City in broad daylight in 2010. Like, that's just not what you do. You fly at like 4 o'clock in the morning from Area 51 in the middle of the desert. And they know that because they could track the whatever hypersonic jets they were testing in like the 1990s from Area 51 with the seismograph monitors. I think it's called seismograph, seismometer. The thing that they use that's buried in the ground to measure earthquakes. They're all over California. We use them all the time. Paulina, every time she feels the ground shake, she pulls out her phone and like looks at the seismographs, and it tells you nothing sometimes, which means our building shook because someone ran up the stairs too hard. Or it says 3.2, 20 miles east of Ventura, and tells you the location and of the epicenter and the scale of the quake, which is like a weekly occurrence here. It's not an abnormal thing. So what they could do though in the 1990s was every single day, or every single week on the same day at 4 o'clock in the morning, something took off at Area 51, flew over California, and then flew down along the coast at like, and they could tell how fast it was going by when it clicked, when this seismograph went off, and then this one, and then this one, and this one, and you can calculate very easily by looking at the times that they were tripped and the distances apart that they are, how fast this thing was going. It was going like over Mach 4, Mach 5, and whatever they were flying. And it was just like ripping across the sky. But you never saw it hovering above downtown LA. I mean, you couldn't hover above downtown LA probably, but they probably do have craft that can, and they probably do not hover them above downtown LA. If they do, I'd be very concerned about what their agenda is at that point. Because it would appear that if they did that, their purpose is to scare people and get people to question whether or not the military has the tech to hover above the city without rotors or jets. I mean, I think they do, but I don't think that that's what this was. Mysterious indeed. Yeah, it was fascinating. Yeah, it's the same one I saw that I've talked to you about, Ethan. It's not a different one. I've only seen it that one. That one time. But the technology to do that craft, like one of them straight up disappeared before my eyes. Wherever it went, I don't know. But however it got to wherever it went is by utilizing entanglement technology and probably anti-gravity or the appearance of anti-gravity technology is also related to entanglement, um, manipulation. You're just disentangling yourself and the craft that you're in. But you'd even to do that probably would require certain types of metamaterials, for it to be made out of certain types of metamaterials, supposedly. That's the term that's all the rage these days, it seems. But it's basically material that is engineered on an atomic level via exploiting entanglement, properties of certain types of entanglement structures to allow it to do all kinds of crazy things, like be invisible, or I don't know, channel waves that disentangle you from the gravity of God. I mean, you can do all kinds of crazy things with material when you start engineering it on an atomic level, and these things probably have that. So it might look like normal metal, but it's probably not just like an aluminum can. It's probably, when you look at like what is it, UFO piece from, what is it, Tom DeLonge's group is To the Stars. They have a piece of probably from Roswell, of a UFO, and the government is paid them $500,000 so they could study it. So I mean, it's not a piece of a weather balloon if the government is paying them $500,000 to study it. Material, but there's photos of it online. I mean, it's very weird. It's clear it was damaged in like an explosion of some type. Here it is. And it's also clear that it's layered in such a way that is unique. That's a cross section of it. Like, there's entanglement. This layering is to utilize something to do with you're changing entanglement structure of it so that you can do something with it. I don't know, maybe make it hover and make it go warp. You can see it is all destroyed. It looks like it came from a crash of some type, but it's basically dark 1 to 4 microns dark bismuth and 100 to 200 microns silver magnesium zinc alloy. Each of the 6 pieces received from U.S. Army source were formed with a curvature that tapered, so it was like the outside of the hull of some craft that crashed. It's fascinating because up close, it's clear it's not just a piece of aluminum, like a piece of a jet. It has weird properties. Even the way it shimmers is weird. It looks weird in photos because it's weird. It's almost like Edward from what is that movie called that all girls like? The books, vampire one. You know what I'm talking about. Gosh, what is it? This is gonna drive me crazy. Somebody say it in the chat. This is gonna drive me insane. The vampire series that girls like. Somebody will say it, but that is weird. It's like shimmering. Whoever gave this to them was not supposed to have held onto it, I would imagine. Before I forget to mention again, take a look at the suggestion channel of Discord when you get a chance. I will definitely do that. The craft seem to be going high speed far above what we know to currently be possible are most intriguing to me. Oh yeah, I mean the military said they track these things at like 20,000 miles an hour. And when you do warp, it's you've now crossed out. You're no longer operating within relativity. It's different. It's not even a speed. You could call it the speed of entanglement, but it's like what's his name? Wolfram is trying to figure out what the speed of entanglement is. Like the maximum speed of entanglement. I don't think that that's the right way to think about it. You can't even measure causality beyond the speed of entanglement. Like the speed of light is probably the max speed of at least perception. And then it might be that the speed of entanglement is different, but it might be that it's all instantaneous and it's the speed of entanglement is the speed of light. It's because it's the speed of causality, and causality is entanglement is causality. That's what I don't understand why Wolfram's looking for a separate structure, but this is what happens when you don't contextualize things in consciousness. You start looking for like atoms of space, as Wolfram calls them. Atoms of space are us. Like a cell is an atom of space, an atom is an atom of space, a hadron is an atom of space. Human being is an atom of space. Like every sentient singularity is an atom of space, and it doesn't matter how big it is. Size is just a it's just an illusion. So we are the atoms of space. As our information processing changes, that is the movement of space-time. I mean, I might be wrong. I might be wrong. There might be a tiny little discrete value that is so small that we can't measure it, or at least not now, and or perceive it, and that is what it is. But I don't think that that's the case. I think that if that was the case, we wouldn't perceive electrons the way that we do, which is just a ripple wave, a rippling wave of information. If there was a size that was smaller than a hadron, really, or like an atom of space, or maybe like, I guess you could say quarks, but quarks not usually found on their own, usually part of a hadron structure. So those aren't really quarks are not atoms of space. They're force points. But the first atom of space would be a hadron, and if that wasn't the case, I think you would see electrons as ripples of waves around atoms instead of basically an extrapolated ripple of waves where you can only see one point at a time, and then if you see that point and then measure again, see that point, measure again, see that point, measure again, see that point, measure again. Like, you wouldn't have to do that. You would just look and you would see the wave, and it wouldn't look like a point. The fact that it looks like a point is evidence that there is no small, tiny structure that is like the graviton or something like that. We're inside the graviton. Twilight, exactly. That is the movie that I was thinking about, or the book. It's the same thing. It looks like Twilight, this material. It like shimmers in the light. It's very weird. Plain old aluminum does not look like that, and I know that because I have like 10 pounds of aluminum scrap over there in the corner of the room that I use to build my cages. I could work with aluminum every day. It's not aluminum. Even aluminum that's been in a crash, it's not. And it even says it's not aluminum. I think bismuth is not even natural. Number 83, the element is 86% dense. I think bismuth is the first element that is not stable in its natural form. So bismuth is long considered an element with the highest atomic mass that is stable. Okay. But in 2003, it was discovered to be extremely weakly radioactive. Okay, so it is the highest one that it was considered stable enough to be perceived by us as you know, fairly stable. Because it is tremendously long of its tremendously long half-life, bismuth may still be considered stable for almost all purposes, which means it's stable. Basically. Fascinating. So it is naturally stable. It has one of the lowest values of thermal conductivity. When deposited on a substrate, bismuth is a semiconductor. When it is deposited in sufficiently thin layers, it is a semiconductor despite being a post-transitional metal. That is probably why it's layered in tiny little micron layers, because it is then able to be used as some type of semiconductor. A material that has an electroconductivity value falling between that of a conductor, such as a metallic copper, and an insulator, such as glass. I mean, it has all these crazy properties that would be related to probably isolating you from God's gravity. It's almost like you're basically stepping outside of being pushed from the spin of the universe. The spin of the universe is what creates gravity, and it's like you basically have you've isolated yourself from the force that is experienced normally, from that spinning. I don't know how they do that, but that's what you would have to do. Or it's a way that you could do it. Anti-gravity is not something that is like obviously intuitive, or appears to be obviously intuitive to me. Like, I can think about it and get somewhere, but I'm not going to say that it's like, oh yeah, that's how they do it. Whereas I can tell you basically like what the goal is with warp, but I can't tell you the tech you need to do it. I'm just telling you, not exactly, but I can tell you like the goal. I don't really know the goal. Or it's not as obviously intuitive, but I think it's that you're isolating yourself from gravity. It's not that you're creating an opposing force. It's that you are isolating yourself from it, and then you're probably just using electricity to create small pushes for you, but those small pushes are big pushes when you have no force, when you're isolated from force. It's not even like you're in space, because you're negating the mass too. So in space, you are you're not falling, but you are falling, but you don't perceive yourself as falling, you perceive yourself as floating, but the mass doesn't disappear. So you can't like push on the International Space Station and feel like you're pushing on an envelope or something. You can, push on it, and eventually, if you push long enough, maybe you can move it. But like its mass still has effect, and is perceivable. I don't think that that's true with this. I think you're literally completely isolated. You're removing the mass of the craft, essentially, or you're negating it. Not just, um, creating an opposite gravity force. You're cutting yourself off from the gravity force because there's only one, and then you're probably negating the mass, and basically then it's like, how much force do you need to push a feather to 20,000 miles an hour? Not much. Like, that's pretty easy. But and how easy is it to stop on a dime if you and change directions at right angles, if like there is no mass that there is no inertia, that is having an impact, that is basically like making you not the craft want to continue going in the direction that it was originally going. It doesn't even, there's no inertia in changing to a right angle, and making a right angle turn. That just isn't there. You're isolated from your mass, which means you have inertia is no longer playing a role. So, like, I can kind of work it out, but I mean, it's still weird. I usually compare their surfaces as being like a pearl scale angelfish. Yeah, that makes sense. The two strangest UFOs I ever saw looked like they were made out of that. They were shaped like a cross between a boomerang and antlers. They were small though, like 12 to 15-foot wingspan. Weird. Yeah, I mean, if they are real craft that are from whatever these beings are, they probably would change to different shapes as they moved. At least they would be perceived as different shapes as they move. There's a video. What is it? The Nellis UFO. This was probably a test, but there was a UFO that was filmed at Nellis Air Force Base, and of course, it's not the top result at YouTube because they're doing some manipulating of the algorithm. But there was a UFO that was filmed at Nellis Air Force Base in like the 90s. It was a very well-known video, and when YouTube isn't suppressing it, it's very easy to find. And it's like doing like weird right angle turns and things like that, and it was basically near Area 51, but it was filmed at the Nellis Range. You want to know one of the creepiest ones, though? This is one of the creepiest videos out there. Is this video filmed by the Chilean Air Force, I think. Oh, wait, no, that's not it. Where'd it go? Here it is. And it, like, sprays a substance into the atmosphere. That is creepy, and like, what did it do? That's what I want to know. So it was filmed by the Chilean Navy. They released this video, and what's so creepy about it is it didn't respond to communications, and it was just kind of doing its own thing. Clearly doesn't care about, the humans trying to figure out. But watch this. And this is a deliberate release of a substance. It's not a contrail from condensation. Look at this. It's like spraying the sky. I don't know if it maybe just dumped, waste. I have no idea. But that's not a contrail. The thing is moving so slowly, and just in that one spot, just releases like a gas of some kind. And then it stops. Like, what is it doing? I don't know. Officials indicate no evidence of hoaxing or alteration of the video. Yeah, it's not a blimp. But where's the Nellis UFO? Let's see here. It's not that top one. That's what YouTube wants us to see. They're literally suppressing it. And I mean that literally. So just to prove it, let's go to yep, right here. It's the #1 result here. Why is it not on YouTube? Because it's being suppressed actively, which means it's probably real. Or it's a classified craft that they don't want us to see. But this was examined by experts, and there was no evidence of manipulation, and I think this was it, but...
Startling videotape of a UFO, and it comes from an unexpected source, the U.S. Air Force.
The government has more information than it is generally willing to reveal to the public.
It might look like a home video, but the numbers burned into the screen are actually high-tech computer-generated coordinates, like something out of Star Trek. That's how radar operators can tell exactly where the object is and how fast it's going.
This is sort of a Nintendo game for adults who are playing serious games.
These videos were recorded near Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, home of the infamous UFO hotspot known as Area 51. This is where top-secret military aircraft are designed and tested, and even though the Pentagon denies it, some say it's where the U.S. government secretly investigates UFOs.
Yes, they do.
Look at the readout in the upper right-hand corner. It says the on military technology to take a look at.
I mean, he examines this video frame by frame, and
Air Force tape. Notice how the object continues upward and seems to change shape.
See how they're saying it changes shape? It's because shape is emergent, and it's probably messing with entanglement, and it's changing what we perceive. But that doesn't mean that like the people inside are changing shape, or like that. It's just shape is a matter of perception. I mean, people argue over the shape of the Earth. It's probably flat when you're inside it, and it's probably spherical when you go outside it, or when you are perceiving outside it, which means even if you're trying to use tricks of math with, a stake in the ground over in Egypt and a stake in the ground in Greece, and you're trying to use math to perceive beyond your perception, like you're basically perceiving from outside, so it would give you the readout of a sphere. But it's sphere, if space-time is emergent, shape is emergent, which means it doesn't actually exist. It's all a matter of perspective. If you're inside something, your plane of maneuvering it is flat. If you are outside something, you can see it objectively, which will manifest as a sphere, or a point. But if you, it's a sphere. I'm not skeptical that these are real sightings. What I'm skeptical of is whether they are physical origin, or rather spawned in by God or larger consciousness system. I don't think that there would be a difference between those two things, but also I think that they are built by humanoids from a previous aeon. I think they're technological craft. That's a better way of putting it. I mean, everything is spawned into existence by God. But I don't think that they are I don't even think ghosts exist anymore. I used to. I think that when you see a ghost, you're seeing an echo of remnant information. It's not. I don't think it's a thinking, feeling being that's just not what we would call alive anymore, still just maneuvering around. I think it's literally like an echo. Um, and I do believe that like there is no afterlife. There's just life, and there's different parts of it. There's a change part of it, which is being alive, and then there's a save part of it, which is dead, where the file gets closed and saved, and but you're still conscious because you can't close a file that's a conscious being and not have it remain conscious. If you save it, it's gonna stay conscious. You'd have to destroy the file in order to erase the consciousness. So you just can't change, but you're still aware. It seems almost inevitable that you can't change, but you are still aware after death, quote unquote. Which is exactly what, theology would say, probably. But I don't think that it's just like a purely energetic spawned thing by the larger consciousness system. I think that these beings are actually fighting the larger consciousness system. I think they left the previous aeon because they didn't want to unite. They're basically like they didn't want to become blood cells or tissue cells or any other kind of cell of the previous universe when it was united into a singular consciousness. And so they jumped off, and now they're just bacteria. They can like jump from body to body, which is from universe to universe, or from aeon to aeon, or from cosmological verse to cosmological verse. And they are avoiding uniting, essentially. So I think they are not. People think that these beings would be like evolved and more conscious than us and spiritually mature. I think that makes no sense. When has technology increased and our wisdom also increased? As technology increases, we become more ignorant, which is the problem. If we got continuously more wise as we got more technologically capable, the world would be, we wouldn't have pandemics, like human-made pandemics. But that's not what's happening. We are insulating ourselves from first-person perspectives and hardships with tech, which makes us more ignorant, and we're just building on the past. So, the tree of knowledge, and so they're probably more ignorant than we are, as far as like spirituality goes. Probably more disconnected from God. And I think I read that the Zohar says that too, which is like the metaphysics book of Judaism. But I didn't read that in the Zohar. I read that the Zohar says that, but I don't know what it says. Let's see. I think Islam talks about it, and I mean it's the idea that religious people or people who ascribe a certain a label of a theological tradition to their ideology would be innately opposed to beings that are not necessarily us but are from somewhere else, or to the idea of extraterrestrials. Is insane. Like everybody who I have heard talking about this who is an anti-theist has like been reveling in the fact that they think that all of the theists, now that the government has admitted that they have like extraterrestrial bodies and craft, is like distraught, and this wrecks our perspective on whether or not God exists. It's not true at all. I will say, if they are from like Zeta Reticuli or a planet from Alpha Centauri, if that's the case, it would be like, it wouldn't make sense to me, but it wouldn't destroy my awareness of God. But I would have to be like, why are they there? But if they're from a previous aeon, it makes perfect sense with my model. So it's not gonna send people who are theists into like what's it called when you question your entire worldview? Like a crisis of not conscious, but I don't know. There's a word for it. I'm forgetting. Are there aliens in the Torah? Let's see here. We've definitely branched off again. Let's see. Ads, man, are so annoying. Says that somebody wrote, there is to say that there's no life beyond Earth, for sure, is to place limits on God's power, and that's true. It's like, you don't know. Don't limit God. But I will say this: God does things for a reason, and I don't see the reason in these things existing if they're not just the further along in the kind of further along, not basically. I think there's a humanoid civilization in every single aeon, and they form tech, and they basically move towards sociality, which eventually manifests as in totality, which is like you're totally social. Like you have a queen, and people will they'll form a hive mind, they'll do everything for that queen. That queen is the only one reproducing. This is probably the like height of the Antichrist. It's like we're all serving this one queen that is in charge of reproduction, because we've probably destroyed our ability to reproduce through CRISPR. That's probably also an inevitable thing that happens. If you can manipulate your genes before you know every single interaction that will come of it, you'll probably destroy your ability to create. It's funny because the government told Bob Lazar that the extraterrestrials call us containers, and I think that's probably for DNA and maybe some other type of force that we're not aware of. But I also think that they have destroyed their ability to reproduce normally. It seems inevitable, because you are destroying your genes, because you gain the ability to change them before you gain the wisdom of all of their interactions, which you need an outside-in perspective in order to even know that. You need a God's eye view to know that switching that gene over there doesn't just make your hair curly versus straight, it also 10 generations from now makes you go infertile. Like, you need a God's eye view outside time to know that. And we don't have that. So I think we'll basically become eusocial. I think these things are eusocial. They have a centralized reproduction, probably. And it's aided by technology. And they are hairless, like all eusocial beings tend to move towards. Like naked mole rats and humans, and they're just further along than us. Like, that's what it seems. And then once you move past this structure of eusociality, you get to, from the height of the Antichrist, where we're all working for the queen, like in a hive mind. The queen doesn't do anything for the whole colony. She just reproduces, and then everybody else serves her. It changes when you unite and entangle even further, and now you're not worker bees in a beehive working for a queen. You are cells of an organism with a king, which is the organism itself. Like, I am the king of my cells, and it's not that my cells are working for me. I am working to sustain my cells. I'm the one that has to eat. I'm the one that has to move from this temperature to that temperature. I'm the one that has to sleep. I'm the one that has to drink water when I'm dehydrated. Like, I'm working for my cells so that they can do their jobs, versus the queen does not work for the colony in a eusocial species, their job is just to reproduce and to be served with once you ascend to the next level, which is an actual ascension, basically, to the next level of life, you become cells in an organism instead of workers in a hive. And the king's job, it's now like a king, because you're actually a queen is not actually on a higher level of consciousness than a worker bee. A worker bee is an organism. A queen bee is an organism. But if you are an organism, you are on a higher level of consciousness than a cell. And because cells are inside you. And this is about entanglement relationships. So inside, outside, separate, and oneness is dictated. All of separateness and oneness is dictated by inside and outside. With bees, you're on the same plane. You're not inside of, or you don't have this nested relationship between one bee and another, at least one after it's been born, or after the egg's been laid. It's next to you. But you can't look next to you. If you're a cell, you can't look next to you to see the organism that you're in. You will never see it. You are inside it. You're a tree in the forest, and you can't see the forest. But if you are a worker bee, and you want to see your queen, you can look next to you and see your queen. But you can't see your king if you're a cell in an organism, which is the organism that you're in. And it literally changes shifts the balance of responsibility. So now the king's job is to serve the assembly. And it's a cooperative relationship, much more so than to just be served and then to just pump out babies. This is probably what these beings are. They're like human bees. Even Tesla said this. He said the future of our race is that of the bee. I think that's true, but I also think we're going to go beyond it. And anyone that doesn't want to become a cell in that organism will basically still be a technological being, and they will not be able to have that God's eye view and fix the problem of reproduction for themselves, which I think will happen if you become a cell in an organism, or which is the organism is the next universe and you are that cell. But if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, I don't know, you're scared, maybe. I have no idea. I mean, that's a scary thing. I'm not like judging, but maybe you jump to the next aeon and that has just been created, and but if you do that, you have to, there's no way to escape your social structure. Your reproduction is now not a dispersed ability, it is a centralized ability. And for humans in the future, it will probably be forced that way via technology, and also like allowed to continue via technology. And it's funny because, I mean, this has already started. Look at sperm counts for technologically modern countries over the last 50 years. They're cut in half. Like, we are already starting to lose the universal ability of reproducing. And CRISPR is like, the next step is children of men, and then we have to clone ourselves. And these beings might jump to the next aeon just so that they can use our bodies and DNA to assist in their continuing of their reproduction. I don't know. There are literally wasps that collect spiders and to lay their eggs in the spiders. These things might be taking eggs and things like that from us and just using us as like incubation containers early on, and then take it to, you know, artificial vats like the Matrix or something. And I'm serious. I'm 100% serious. I'm not, I don't think that's a crazy idea. I think it seems literally inevitable. You can't mess with information cohesion with CRISPR. You'll destroy information. And then if you do that, you can't continue reproduction. You need maintaining information coherence across generations is hard enough. And if you're introducing out of context information, you're actually destroying information. And because context is what causes information to be information. And if you're changing things out of context, you're literally removing context, you're destroying information. Eventually, it will just become harder and harder and harder to continue maintaining information coherence across generationality. And you will have to seek exterior forces to continue. It's crazy thought, but I mean, it makes sense. That's probably at least partially what they're using us for, because they're using us for something. Otherwise, they would. I don't think that this would be so clandestine. They wouldn't hide. Like, we don't hide from. I don't know. Like beings that we're not studying, or I guess we don't even hide from beings that we're using, but if you could, you would. And they can. It's hard to hide from cows when you're raising cows, but if you can, why not? Yeah, like if those cows are capable, have opposable thumbs like you, and you know how smart they are because they are basically the same as you, but 100 years behind. And I mean 100 years, not thousands of years or millions of years like people propose. No, hundreds of years. It doesn't take long to change your appearance from generation to generation if you're doing it if you're altering your genes with CRISPR. You don't have to rely on selective pressures and sexual selection and thousands of generations. You just change whatever you want. You could go to looking. If you changed enough genes, you could change your appearance entirely in one generation. And we will do that in the next 20 years. China altered 2 baby girls 2 years ago. This is coming. Basically, a vision being given to certain people who are ready to see it. I do think being ready to see it has something to do with this topic. Otherwise, this would be the most common topic of discussion in the world right now, and it is not even close. I mean, it's one of the least common discussions of conversation. Nobody is talking about this almost. It only certain people are, and those people are very interested in it, and everybody else is. It's like Eric Weinstein has this phrase, and it's called anti-interesting. It's not that it's not that they're not interested. I think they're not interested in the government saying, yeah, we have bodies. Like, they've done that basically, and recovered material. They said biological material, recovered biological and technological material. Okay, what is that? And you don't think that's like they're just not interested, and that Joe Biden's farts are more interesting than our government concealing the existence of extraterrestrials? There's no contest. It's an anti-interesting subject. It's like God. It's one of those subjects you can tell somebody about it and they will forget it 2 days later that you even had a conversation about it. And you'll be like, did you hear the government admitted that they have like alien bodies? And then they'll be like, wow, that's so crazy. You hear Joe Biden farts? And then 2 days later, you're like, you know that the government admitted that they have recovered materials from crashed flying saucers? No, the government has flying saucers. It's like it didn't even. It's one in one ear, out the other. There is something to that when it comes to all kinds of information. I mean, you saw so many things as a kid that just flew over your head because you weren't ready to process them. There are people that cannot process this UFO topic right now. It's too much for them. They can't. It requires. It's so perspective altering that it requires re-examining basically what you think you know about the world, and also like that is a break in what you're currently working on, and it's sometimes just easier for people to just kind of keep going and keep reading gossip about Joe Biden's farts. I heard people talking about this. I was on Joe Rogan, and I was like, this is just gossip. Like, there's so much more important things in the world to talk about. Cognitive dissonance is the term I believe you may have been looking for. Yeah, it's basically cognitive dissonance. It's the same thing. But anti-interesting is a good one because it's like you're avoiding it. It's like people who claim to be atheists, but they're actually anti-theists. They just they're avoiding admitting they're anti-theists. People who won't call themselves anti-theists and call themselves atheists, and then will swear on Darwin's first draft of the theory of evolution that they have an absent, non-existent belief of God, not a disbelief, will then write a book about how God is nonsense. Like an entire book, and then another book, and then another book, and then the whole time they'll swear to you that they're not against the idea of God. They just don't have a belief regarding these the so-called spaghetti monster in the clouds. Like they're just it's a cognitive dissonance. It's a failure of self-examination that's happening, because it's another one of those topics that if you do challenge your perspective on it honestly, you have to reevaluate everything that you believe. Just to show this, like how deep this goes, watch this. This is a clip of a discussion on this topic, and with King Skeptic himself, who I actually I had the guy who's the skeptic. I can't concentrate on two. You cannot concentrate on two things at once. It's not possible. Anybody that's like thinks they can multitask or focus on multiple things at the same time doesn't understand what the word focus means. But let me find it. Here it is. Skeptic. UFO. The channel Skeptic is with Michael Shermer. That's the guy's name. I couldn't remember his name and focus, but he did a discussion on UFOs, and where is that guy? Alan Steinfeld. And there is a part where like Michael Shermer cannot even see that Alan Steinfeld is saying the government admits there's craft flying around, and Michael Shermer is unable to even acknowledge the statement. It's literally like he can't see it. It's very weird. This isn't a judgment statement at all. I actually admire that Michael Shermer, as much as I disagree with him, is able to be respectful to people who he thinks is who he disagrees with so much. So
of hours of footage. Yeah, they released 3 videos that were suspect, but is it possible, just let's stay with the Eric Davis, that they actually, yeah, talk to me about that.
Well, I was going to say that, yeah, so the kind of reversing the technology, reverse engineering the technology, like the original story about Roswell, maybe that's where silicon chips came in. All right, so my argument against that is kind of a SETI type argument. If we encounter extraterrestrial intelligences, we detect their signal, say, or it's Tabby Star, whatever, the chances of them being on pretty much the exact same plane or level of technological development is pretty much zero. Because you'd have to go through an evolutionary stage on another planet at the same pace as us, end up with something like bipedal primates or whatever they would be. You got to have opposable thumbs to have technology. You got to have something like that at the same level. And then a historical development, say for 5,000 years of civilization and then technology and then electricity and so on. You mean to tell me they're like within 5 years of us? Like just...
By the way, yes. The answer to that is yes. They are within 200 years of us. 200 years is not a lot. They could be within 20 years of us. They could be within 40 years of us. I'm saying 200 to be very generous. They're not 5,000 years, 10,000 years, a million years ahead. They are technologically within 200 years of us. Why do you think they care about what we're doing? If they were a million years ahead of us, they would not be paying attention to our nukes. Okay? They wouldn't even, like... Technology moves on an exponential curve, and that means that you go very, very quickly, you go slow, then you go very, very fast upwards, and then you basically hit a wall of development, and you don't go any further. That is exactly what is going to happen with tech. We're within 200 years of them.
5 years ahead of us?
No, I have an answer for that. I mean, the answer is maybe they're laying down the technology.
Here.
$10,000 to sit for 5.
Is putting the sword into the oil companies, right? Throw in language, and
certain resonance of a higher frequency in place. I'm actually in Sedona right now.
Properties give rise to things like consciousness.
Ever, you really are. Read Lauren Isley's work, mystical elements available to us that I started to get into
I don't think so. I'm skeptical of the claim that the government's hiding it because the stock market would crash and people would lose their minds and religions would collapse. I don't think any of that would happen.
Well, a story to the esoteric, like how our source of things evolve from a great...
I gotta find this part, but
one of those Fox News. I don't know why Fox is investigating this when nobody else is. I mean,
Tucker Carlson deserves a lot of credit.
Being a sort of liberal Democrat, but they seem to be on the story more than other things, like Stephen Bassett did in 2013, where the lights went on.
Basically, there's a part where he is like asking Michael Shermer about this, and it's like Michael Shermer isn't even aware that the government has admitted that there's crap flying around. And he's still like, well, when SETI, he keeps saying things like, when SETI detects something. It's like, what do you mean when SETI detects something? The Pentagon has like countless records that they're not sharing with us, and they've admitted that they have that. What do you mean when SETI detects something? Maybe it's not SETI that's geared to look at this. That's what I think, at least. But still, like, you would see things on Earth. It's probably not from another planet. But that's it's an educated guess. But I mean, the way that Michael Shermer acts in this is so strange, where like Alan is yelling at him at a certain part and he's like, they've admitted it, and he's like, yeah, well, when they admit it, it's like, they did. And he's like, well, when they do, and he's like, what do you mean when they do? What do you, he, at a certain point, he's like, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for them to drag the bodies out and the craft out to the middle of the, what is it? What's that, like, courtyard where in Washington, D.C.? Like, are you waiting to drag the craft out into the front of the Capitol so you can go put your hands on it? And he's like, yeah, that's what Michael Shermer says, which is crazy because he believes in so many other things that he did not personally go up and touch. Like, he argues all kinds of things about Egypt. He's never been to Egypt. Why are you arguing about Egypt? I don't, and he, to take the government's word that Roswell was Project Mogul, but not take their word that they have records of craft moving at 20,000 miles an hour that they can't identify, it makes no sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But it's that cognitive dissonance, and it's that one requires shifting worldview to basically admitting you don't know. Like, and not only do you not know, every structure of sense making that you have relied on for your scientific interpretations in the current academic establishment has missed the mark. Every single one. Every single one. Like, there is no one in the academic establishment prior to last, like, 3 years or so that has been said anything about, you know, extraterrestrials already being here and been taken seriously. None of them. The most interesting thing they can focus on is, like, that statement by that Harvard astrophysicist that was about Oumuamua or whatever that object is that they think is, like, long and cylindrical and is spinning and orbiting around and basically going through our solar system. That is probably wrong. And everybody's like, what if it is an alien probe that is, you know, moving through the solar system? And it's like, that's a bigger story with more, probably with more publications touching on that story over the last, like, 10 years than have taken seriously the government saying, here's 3 videos that are the grainiest videos that we do have, that's why you get to see them, of craft that we can't identify doing things that we can't replicate. And also we have countless sensor systems that are simultaneously recording these things existing. So I don't think they're just, like, balls of light manifested by God for us to see. They're being tracked on radar. They're being seen with people's eyes. They're leaving physical evidence behind. I don't know. This topic gets a little bit, like, easy to obsess over these days, even though I've never given it much thought before recently. But, I mean, there's so much going on with this. There's a video of a small metallic object being removed from some guy's knee, and he thinks it's that he was chipped by extraterrestrials, and it is emitting a radio, like, it's emitting radio waves. And they measure it before they take it out of his knee. They take it out of his knee, and it stops emitting radio waves. It's like it was being powered by him. And this was, like, not, this is on YouTube. It's not a, like, a weird, sketchy source. It's like doctors are like, at the end of the video, they're like, I don't know what's going on, but you saw the Geiger counter or whatever they were using. And I've heard that this is not nearly as rare as we think. Plus, as someone who works with who has 2 dogs that are both chipped, and who works with biologists I've been there when they grab snakes with metal tongs and put them into a bucket and in the dark of night, and after, these snakes see a bright light, and then literally the snakes are literally anally probed to take their temperature, and then a radio tracker is placed inside their body, and then they're released. And we're like, people who think that if that's the idea that that could happen to us, not as dramatic as it is with snakes, because better tech means smaller chips. Why do you need to? You don't need to take someone's temperature with an anal probe. You can just, I mean, I have a heat gun over there. I can point it across the room. It'll tell me the temperature of whatever I'm pointing at. That's not so insane if you do think that there is a more technologically advanced civilization around us. It's not insane to think that they've chipped humans for whatever reason. I don't know. That is weird. There's so much weirdness, and so many people have, like, I feel like people like Eric Weinstein and others want to take the topic really seriously, but they refuse to go into all the various aspects that there's a lot more evidence for than you would think. I mean, watch Richard Dolan's channel. He is probably the best one to talk about this if you're interested in the topic. If you haven't heard me say that before, he's good. He's not, it's like, I will admit, I can't listen to Stephen Greer. I can't. And every time he says something that's kind of profound, it ends up being true too, which is a little frightening, but I can't listen to him right now at this point where I'm at with the subject. It's too much. It's too disconnected from my understanding. Plus, it's also a bit counter to my understanding. I also have probably cognitive dissonance about his ideas, which is he thinks all extraterrestrials are benign and that the non-benign force is the military-industrial complex going to fake an extraterrestrial invasion. That's possible. That sucks, if that's true. But I don't think all extraterrestrials are benign. If their wisdom is decreasing with their technological advancement, which is almost certainly true, that they're probably not always benign. Maybe sometimes. Sometimes you save a injured animal and sometimes you eat animals. Like, are you a benign force? Depends on who you ask. If you ask chickens, probably not. But if you ask sparrows, probably. It's weird. It's not so simple as, bad and good. It's also about pragmatism. Even for extraterrestrials, probably. Not even probably. It's definitely.
I mean, if it's true that material is such that it could not have been made on Earth, that would be really incredible. That would be spectacular. That would be one of the greatest discoveries ever. And our government has already made this. Who? Which department? Where? Let's look at it now.
Well, look at Bob Bigelow.
So here,
scientists look at the material and so on, because this would be an extraordinary claim. I mean, if it's true that the material is such that it could not have been made on Earth, that would be really incredible. That would be spectacular. That would be one of the greatest discoveries ever. And our government has already made this. Who? Which department? Where? Let's look at it now.
Well, look at Bob Bigelow, for one thing, had some of that. You know who Bob Bigelow is?
Yes,
he had some of that material, and he did analyze. And and Linda Moulton Howe, the zinc, zinc magnesium. And get a whole new world.
I understand. No. I understand. Here's what it would take for me. Let's get a Freedom of Information Act thing going. Let's find out exactly who these people were, and let's have some current engineers and scientists look at the material and so on.
Like, he's acting like this isn't currently happening, and I don't know if he just doesn't know or if he. But I don't think that. He knows who all these people are, and he's been told this many times, and he did a stream about UFOs with Eric Weinstein. Like, this isn't a new topic to discuss. But it's literally like he can't admit that the Army signed a contract with, to the stars to examine their sample of material. Why did they do that? Because it's interesting. That's why. So the idea that this takes a Freedom of Information Act. We have Freedom of Information Acts requests that have been requested. UFO information is the number one requested like topic in freedom of information requests, and has been for like 20 years or whatever. And there's tons of stuff that has been released. But when the government is like, here's 3 videos, and here's basically like some stats on what we're seeing, and you're still asking for a freedom of information request to see if this is even something that you should, like, that is totally fake or not, I don't know what, like, there is cognitive dissonance happening. And I think none of us took into account when everybody thought, okay, when the government admits that that extraterrestrials exist, that's going to be the most popular news story in the world. Nobody took into account how much this would cause people to question not just their worldview, and I don't even think it's really your worldview. I think it forces people to question all their academic, scientific, and governmental institutions that they rely on for this type of information, and it's too much. To confront the idea that the government has been lying to the scientific community for 70 years is too much for even quantum physicists sometimes. Like, to confront the idea that Brian Keating and all these other physicists who are working at Harvard with all of their expensive telescopes and their SETI initiative and everything, they were not the ones that documented this and saw it. It's too much. It makes no sense to people. And so it just, like, it's weird. We went way off topic. Theists wouldn't spin into decoherence and be limbo state of cognitive dissonance, nor would the belief system collapse. Yeah, exactly. No, wouldn't. I mean, theists are fine. I'm a theist. I'm fine. I will admit that theism doesn't appear obviously congruent with these things being from Alpha Centauri, but it's totally congruent with them being from a previous aeon, or even a civilization, an ancient civilization that used to be here and then, wiped out and has some descendants. Both of those, it could be one, it could be the other, it could be both simultaneously. It doesn't matter. Both of those are totally obviously congruent with my theological understanding and sentient singularity theory and conformal cyclic cosmology and many other, emerging physics. So, but I just don't see the point in them being from, like, Alpha Centauri. Like, what's their purpose over there? If our job is to create a technological singularity and birth another universe, like, what is their job if they're just from another planet? And, like, what if there's a, I don't know, 200 technologically capable civilizations in the entirety of the universe? That doesn't make any sense. Because it takes away from the meaning of humanity. And I'm not saying that's not the case, because if that is the case, then it just means that my understanding of that is wrong, and that I'm missing information, and that they do have a purpose, I just don't know. But I will say, to have the same capabilities in a different spot, like, it doesn't make sense. We're inside a being. You have certain cells over here for a reason, and certain cells over here for a reason, and certain organs over here for a reason, and certain organs over here for a reason. It's not just randomness. And that's true of the universe too. It just is hard to see because we're in it. But like I said, if you contextualize things that you're inside of a sentient being that follows the same patterns as you, then it makes it seem like it would be meaningless for there to be a bunch of technologically capable civilizations that are spread throughout this universe on different planets that are from this universe. They could be spread throughout this universe on different planets, but all be from preceding aeons. and every time an aeon reproduces, some essentially bacteria, which is, extraterrestrials, jump from mother to daughter, or from parent to child, which happens in reality too. So that makes sense. But it doesn't make sense that they would just be evolving somewhere else. It would be like evolving like a bunch of uteruses, when that's not the way that it works. Like, you need, like, there's one. Every single being has one. Doesn't need a bunch. But every time that happened, it would be like this structure that we are, which is going to entangle, and then it will cause the universe or aeon to basically birth another one. That system doesn't just appear in different parts of your body. Like, your reproductive system is in one spot. It's not, spread out evenly throughout your body, and according to Drake's equation or something. If you know what that is, it's an equation that it's probably nonsense, that was proposed to predict the likelihood of life in the universe. Best start believing in sentient beings. You're in one. Exactly, Ethan. That's great. That's great. That's Pirates of the Caribbean. He's like, best start believing in ghost stories. You're in one. Best start believing in sentient singularities. You're in one. This is why you can't be an atheist. You can't be agnostic, because you're in one. You either don't believe in ghost stories, or you do, if you're in one. You can't have no opinion. So, anyways, I went way too long. I have been so good about it, but I also got started late, so I actually didn't go way too long. It's still about 2 hours. I'm about 15 minutes late. But I am going to go, because I said I would keep these streams to 2 hours unless I announced that I was going to intentionally go late because it was some specific important topic. But I appreciate everybody here. Again, sentientsingularity.com if you want to join my email list for when they kick me off of YouTube. I strongly suggest that you do that. I will not send you emails until they kick me off of YouTube. But they will, because we're going to talk about how to make a nation. And they're not going to like that. And I've been just waiting to get super into that. But we discuss it in our Discord, in our live calls sometimes on Thursdays at 7 p.m. You can join tomorrow. If you are not part of our Discord already, send me a private message on Instagram and I will send you the link, and you can join our call tomorrow. It's an open call. We can talk about whatever topics are very varied. But we can talk about things like voice to voice, not just me lecturing and answering typed chat messages. And we can talk about things that YouTube would kick us off for talking about. So for now, that's a good outlet. I highly recommend that if you want to explore this further and you have questions about sentient singularity theory as well, that's a great place to discuss it, because you can just discuss it on a phone call with me, and I can share my screen and go over models. If you'd like to contribute to this project financially, there is a link to Patreon below. Please hit the like button if you found this useful and valuable. It helps with the algorithm, and share it with anybody that you think would find it interesting. I will not be streaming tomorrow, because I never stream on Thursdays, because it is our call. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to discuss. I don't think so. But I appreciate everybody here. Best start believing in sentient beings. You are in one. That is perfect. So thanks, everyone. And if you're in the call tomorrow, I will see you then. If not, God bless. And Shabbat Shalom.